Before I start writing, just want to flag one thing quickly. The story structure from the original video involves a tracker implanted in someone's body without consent, which I'll handle carefully to keep it thriller-toned rather than anything that could read as instructional. Everything else, betrayal, FBI cooperation, family secrets, is totally fine for the drama genre. Here we go. My mother-in-law's 60th birthday party was held at a rented vineyard outside of Charlottesville, Virginia, on a Saturday afternoon in early October. String lights, catered appetizers, a string quartet playing something soft near the rose garden. My husband had spent 3 weeks planning it, and everyone kept telling him what a wonderful son he was. I stood near the dessert table holding a glass of sparkling water. I hadn't been drinking much lately for reasons I hadn't told anyone yet, and I watched my husband Daniel work the room, shaking hands, laughing at the right moments, touching the small of my back whenever he passed me, a gesture so practiced it felt like punctuation. We had been married for 4 years. I was 31. I taught 2nd grade at an elementary school 20 minutes from our house, and I genuinely loved my life. Or I thought I did. The man who changed everything was carrying a tray of empty champagne flutes toward the kitchen. He was one of the catering staff. Older, maybe 60, with a short gray beard and quiet eyes. He had walked past me twice already. On the 3rd pass, he slowed down just slightly, and without looking at me directly, he set a folded cocktail napkin on the edge of the dessert table next to my hand. Then he kept walking. I looked down at it. For a moment I thought it was a mistake, that it had simply fallen off the tray. But it was folded deliberately, placed deliberately. I picked it up. 4 words, written in small, careful handwriting. Don't trust your husband. I looked up immediately. The man had disappeared through the door to the kitchen. My heart was doing something strange and fast inside my chest. I looked around the room. Daniel was across the vineyard, laughing with his college friends, his hand around a beer. Nobody was watching me. I folded the napkin and put it in my jacket pocket. I told myself it was nothing. Someone playing a prank. A mistake meant for someone else. I told myself that for about 40 minutes, right up until the catering van was loading up in the parking lot, and I walked out on the pretense of getting something from our car. The man was lifting a folding table into the back of the van. I walked up to him directly. You left something for me, I said. I need you to explain it. He didn't look surprised to see me. He set the table down and turned around, and up close his eyes were very serious, the kind of serious that doesn't come from dramatics, but from actually knowing something heavy. I'm sorry for the way I did that, he said. I didn't know a better way. Who are you? He told me his name was Ray. He said he used to work for the federal government, not in a way he could fully explain, and not in a way he could fully explain, and not anymore. He said he had been watching Daniel Mercer for 14 months. Watching him for what? I asked. He looked at me for a long moment as if deciding how much I could handle. Your husband has a second identity, he said, a legal name he hasn't used in 11 years but never formally abandoned. Accounts connected to that name, and a woman in Portland who believes she's been married to him for 6 years? The vineyard sounds, the laughter, the string quartet, continued behind me as if nothing had happened. My brain performed a strange trick where it simply refused to process what I had just heard, the way your eyes sometimes refuse to read a word that doesn't make sense in context. That's not possible, I said. I know it doesn't feel possible, he said. I'm sorry. He handed me a business card, not his own, but a woman's name and a phone number, with a federal agency abbreviation I recognized below it. He said her name was Agent Carla Voss, and that she had been building a case for 8 months. He said they had been waiting for the right time to make contact with me, and that he had taken it upon himself to accelerate that timeline, because 2 days ago, something had changed. What changed? I asked. He knows the investigation exists, Ray said. He doesn't know how much they have. But he's been moving money since Thursday. He closed the van doors. He looked at me one more time. Call her tonight, he said. Don't use your home Wi-Fi. Don't tell him you know anything. And I am sorry truly for what you're about to go through. He drove away. I stood in the parking lot for 3 minutes. Then I fixed my face and went back inside to toast my mother-in-law's 60th birthday, standing next to my husband, smiling when he put his arm around me. I have never performed anything harder in my life. I called Agent Voss from the parking lot of a CBS at 9:45 that night after Daniel had fallen asleep. I used my cell data, not Wi-Fi, because Ray had told me not to, and I was operating entirely on instinct and a cold, careful numbness that had settled over me like a second skin. She answered on the second ring. She was calm. She was clearly experienced at receiving calls from wives in parking lots at 9:45 at night. She told me she was glad I had called, that she understood this was overwhelming, and that she wanted to be completely honest with me about what they knew. His real name, the name he was born with, was Daniel Cole Whitfield. 12 years ago, he had accumulated significant federal fraud charges under that name and had disappeared before trial. He had rebuilt an identity methodically, legally changing his last name through a process that was legitimate on its surface, but built on a foundation of falsified background documentation. He had, in fact, married a woman named Teresa in Portland, Oregon 6 years ago. Teresa did not know about me. I did not know about Teresa. What does he want? I asked. What is he actually doing? Financial fraud, primarily, Agent Voss said. He targets women with access to financial assets or institutional information. You work in the public school system, which actually isn't his typical target. We believe he may have married you for different reasons. Your family has a land trust in Western Virginia. My grandmother's land, 22 acres that had been in my family since the 1940s, which I stood to inherit from my mother, who was currently 64 and in good health. I sat in my car in the CVS parking lot and understood, in a way that is very difficult to describe, that my entire marriage was a financial instrument. What do I need to do? I asked. Nothing dramatic, she said. Not yet. We need 2 more weeks to close the gaps in the documentation. We need you to behave normally. Can you do that? I thought about standing in the vineyard holding my sparkling water, watching him laugh. Yes, I said, I can do that. I want to tell you that the next 2 weeks were manageable. They were not. They were the longest 14 days of my life, and I spent most of them in a state of hypervigilance that I disguised as normalcy with a discipline I didn't know I had. I watched him differently. I watched the way he answered his phone, always leaving the room, which I had accepted as a quirk of his, a privacy habit. I watched the way he managed our joint finances, always him, always with a reasonable explanation that I had never thought to question. I watched the way he looked at me sometimes when he thought I wasn't paying attention, and I tried to determine whether what I saw was affection or assessment. I genuinely could not tell. That scared me more than anything else. Agent Voss checked in every 3 days. She told me they had made contact with Teresa in Portland, who had reacted as you would expect and was now cooperating fully. She told me the financial documentation was coming together. She told me I was doing well. On a Wednesday night in the 3rd week, Daniel told me over dinner that he was thinking about taking a weekend trip to look at some property in North Carolina. He said it casually, the way people say things they've thought about carefully. He said a friend had a connection to a developer, that there might be an investment opportunity, and wouldn't it be fun to drive down together? I smiled and said it sounded interesting. After dinner, I went upstairs on the pretext of grading papers, and I texted Agent Voss. He's talking about a trip to NC. Is this connected to what you're tracking? She called me back in 4 minutes. Don't go with him, she said. Tell him you can't get a substitute teacher on short notice. Is he planning something? She paused. We think he may be positioning to access a portion of the land trust ahead of schedule. There's a document in process we weren't aware of until today. We're moving faster than planned. Can you be available Friday morning? For what? We're going to need your help to make the arrest clean, she said. No courtroom surprises, nothing that gives his lawyers room to argue entrapment or procedural error. We need him to make the move on the documentation while we're watching. That means he needs to believe everything is normal until Friday. 2 more days. I went back downstairs. Daniel was watching television. He looked up when I came in and smiled, and I sat down next to him on the couch, and he put his arm around me the way he always did. and I watched the television and thought about what my grandmother's land looked like in October, all the leaves turning, the old fence line along the creek, the way she used to call it the Green Kingdom when I was a child. He was never going to touch it. On Thursday evening, Daniel got a phone call and stepped out onto the back porch. Through the kitchen window, I watched him pace, his voice low. He came back inside and said it was a work thing, nothing important. That night, I could not sleep. At 2 a.m, I lay in the dark next to my husband and I thought about the version of my life I had believed in. The anniversary parties we would eventually throw, the children we had talked about having, the quiet ordinariness of building something together over decades. I had wanted that. I had wanted it genuinely and specifically and with my whole self. I let myself feel that loss completely, alone in the dark. Then I got up, made coffee, and graded papers until sunrise. Friday morning, Agent Voss called at 7:15. He's already accessed the notary system, she said. He submitted a document request at 6:42 a.m. We have it. We're moving at 9. Okay, I said. Are you at home? Yes. Stay there. Officers will come to you first. This is only a precaution. They'll explain everything when they arrive. I want you to know that you are not in any danger. He doesn't know we're coming. Daniel came downstairs at 7:45. He poured coffee. He was in a good mood. A specific, contained good mood, the kind that comes from feeling like something is going according to plan. I notice that now. All the things I notice now. We sat at the kitchen table. I asked him about his day. He said it would probably be busy, some filings, some calls. At 8:55, 2 federal vehicles pulled up to the house. I watched Daniel's face when he saw them through the window. I watched the exact moment he understood what was happening, a very fast, very complete rearrangement, like a sentence being rewritten in real time. He looked at me. I looked back at him. I did not say anything. He opened his mouth. How long have you? Long enough, I said. Then the agents were at the door, and everything that followed was procedurally correct and professionally handled, and nothing like what you see in movies. He was calm. He did not run. He did not make a scene. He was cuffed and walked to the vehicle, and at no point did he look at me again, and I understood that the performance was simply over, and there was no reason to continue it in any direction. Agent Voss came inside afterward. She sat at my kitchen table and walked me through everything. The charges, the timeline, what came next legally. She told me Teresa was being briefed simultaneously in Portland. She asked me if I had someone to call. I called my mother. The legal process took 8 months. I will not walk you through all of it, because most of it was tedious and exhausting in the specific way that legal processes are, full of documents and waiting and phone calls from the attorney the school district helped me find. What I will tell you is what I discovered along the way, because some of it I had not known. He had done this before. Not just Teresa and me. There had been a woman in Atlanta 7 years ago, before Teresa, before me. She had lost a significant amount of money before she understood what was happening. She was the one who had originally contacted the federal investigators who had built the case slowly and carefully across years, across state lines, across the accumulated evidence of a man who was very good at being believed. Her name was Donna. We spoke on the phone once, briefly. She was 53, warm, dry-humored in the way of people who have processed something and come out the other side. You couldn't have known, she said to me. I want you to understand that. He was very practiced. I know, I said. I'm still angry at myself. That's normal, she said. It passes. Not completely, but enough. My mother came and stayed with me for 3 weeks after the arrest. She is 64 and practical and does not say unnecessary things. She cooked and helped me sort through paperwork, and on the evenings when I was quiet and not good company, she simply sat in the same room with me, reading, present without demanding anything. One evening, she told me that Ray, the man from the catering staff, had actually been a colleague of a federal investigator who had retired from the case 2 years prior. He had no official role. He had simply known about the investigation through a former colleague, had recognized Daniel's name when the catering company assigned him to the birthday party booking, and had made a private decision. He had no obligation to say anything, my mother said. I know, I said. People do that sometimes, she said. They just decide. I thought about that for a long time. Daniel Whitfield, that with the name on the conviction, not the name I had married, was sentenced 14 months after the arrest. The sentence was significant. His attorneys had tried several angles and none of them had held. Teresa and I have texted occasionally. We are not friends exactly, but we are something. Two people who share a particular strange experience that very few others understand from the inside. She's funny, actually. She sent me a meme once that made me laugh out loud for the first time in what felt like a long time. The land trust is still in my family. He never got to touch it. I still teach second grade. My students this year are enthusiastic and chaotic and obsessed with a particular brand of fruit snack that I have had to ask them to stop bringing because the wrappers end up everywhere. I love them enormously. I am not dating anyone. I am not in a hurry. I am learning, slowly, that there is a version of trust that is not naivety, that noticing things is not the same as being suspicious of everything, that the instinct I had learned to override, the small, persistent sense that something was slightly off, was information I had the right to take seriously. I take it seriously now. What I want you to know, and I've thought carefully about how to say this, is that it was not a character flaw in me that let this happen. It was not stupidity or weakness. He was skilled at this. He had practiced it across years and across lives. The failure was entirely his. It took me a long time to believe that. I believe it now. Where are you watching from today? Drop your city in the comments. I always read them. And if this story resonated with you, if you've ever had that quiet feeling that something wasn't adding up and talked yourself out of listening to it, tell me about it below. You're not alone in that. Not even close. I've thought a lot about what made Daniel so effective for so long. It wasn't that he was smarter than the people around him. It was that he understood something about human trust. That most of us extend it freely, generously, almost automatically to the people we love, and that a person willing to exploit that generosity has a significant head start. Sarah didn't fail. She was deceived by someone who had spent years perfecting the art of being believed. There's a difference, and it matters enormously. What I've come to understand, sitting with this story over many months, is that consequences are not random. They follow from choices, not immediately, not always visibly, but with a consistency that is almost mathematical over time. Daniel made choices, hundreds of them, across years and across the lives of real people. Each one narrowed the path ahead of him, built a structure he would eventually be trapped inside. He was not unlucky. He was not undone by fate. He was undone by the cumulative weight of what he had chosen to be. And on the other side of that same equation, the women he wronged, Donna in Atlanta, Teresa in Portland, Sarah in Virginia, made choices too. They chose to cooperate rather than collapse. They chose honesty with investigators even when it was humiliating. They chose to treat what happened to them as information rather than identity. Those choices also accumulated. They built something. Not the life any of them had planned, but a life that was genuinely their own, with integrity intact. That is not a small thing. That is, I would argue, the only thing that actually matters in the long run. There is a kind of intelligence that has nothing to do with test scores or credentials. It's the intelligence of paying attention to small inconsistencies, to the quiet feeling that something doesn't quite add up, to the moments when a story is slightly too smooth. Sarah had that intelligence. She had suppressed it for years because she loved someone, and love has a way of arguing us out of our own perceptions. Reconnecting with it, learning to take her own instincts seriously, was not a defeat. It was a hard-won form of wisdom. And then there is the question of what we do with difficulty. Sarah kept teaching. She kept showing up for her second graders, kept grading papers, kept being present in a life that felt completely destabilized underneath her. That's not a trivial detail. That sustained effort, that refusal to let someone else's dishonesty hollow out her own daily commitments, is a form of courage that doesn't look dramatic from the outside, but is genuinely hard from the inside. We often think of resilience as bouncing back. I think it's more like continuing forward under conditions that argue against it. Sarah continued forward. So did Teresa. So did Donna. Each of them, in their own way, chose character over bitterness, and that choice opened doors that bitterness would have permanently closed. The land is still in Sarah's family. Her classroom is still full of children who have no idea what their teacher has been through and who love her anyway. That's not nothing. That's actually everything.